Yeah, there's a bit of an issue, and I just want to know, I'd like to, if you have a copy available, I don't want you to do a bunch of research, but if you've got one where you know where it is and you can send it to me, that'd be
I
great.
imagine Kathy has.
Bream's gone, I guess. and
Yeah.
We can't get
Right.
Okay, you guys are good?
Church did
All right, welcome to the Sunbury Services Committee meeting. It is February 2nd, 2022, 6:30 p.m. We're going to call to order. Roll call, please.
John Grumney.
Here.
Damon Capel. Murray Neff.
Here.
Joe St. John.
Here. Got 3 present. I believe we're going to defer on the minutes approval. We may not have the votes for passage tonight. Are you okay with that, Steve?
Yeah.
Wait till Damon gets back. Okay. We do have visitors, but we have scheduled visitors as well. This would be the unscheduled visitors. I don't see any in the crowd today. It's an overwhelming amount of people, but nobody wanting to speak. So we're going to move on to old business, and we have staffing update. Steve?
Yeah, I'll give you a real quick. It was in my report, actually. Brad is down 2 people right now, one on an anticipated retirement and one on a probationary period that didn't, that person resigned. So we had 3 very good interviews this week, and we've got 2 more candidates scheduled for Friday. And we think we'll be able to get back to make some offers, get back to reasonable staffing levels. The Dale was down 2, he's back up 1, and he says that person is working out pretty well. He's already got his learner's permit for his CDL and catching on the labs and things like that. We have the possibility that maybe if we have some leftovers from the services interviews, that we may have a CDL. He's holding fast to his need to hire someone with a CDL. And so far, we haven't been able to identify a candidate for him that has a CDL. So
Okay.
that's where we're at with staffing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. We also have the pleasure of inviting Dan Barr, Dave Parkinson here to review the wastewater treatment plan, plant facilities plan. And I believe we're going to be sharing this.
I just said, I'm there before I just said that and share. For the screen share,
Yeah,
or do I need to pick?
you pick it and then you hit share.
Okay. Very good.
And then you might just want to make it full screen.
There we go.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Barr.
All right, well, thank you. So again, my name's Dan Barr. I'm the project manager with CT and currently leading the effort from our side on the wastewater plant design as well as the facilities plan. So we're kind of giving you an update and some things going on with that. Go ahead. There you go. We're going to just point out some things that are in the facilities plan, conclusions, recommendations, as well as review the status of both the facilities plan and the what we call the interim design as we go. So the point of the facilities plan, they're required by EPA, or at least recommended, whenever you're looking at plant expansions and things like that. The main purpose is to look at what you have now, look at what you're going to need in the future, usually a 20-year window, and figure out what's going to need to happen to the plant to deal with that. So that we'll talk about that tonight. One of the things that's just a key point, especially some of the new guys here, is that what we're trying to do is even though we're going to expand the capacity of the plant, the flow through the plant, we are going to try to keep the what's called loadings to be the same or less, or within the current permit. What that means is the actual things in the water, we're going to try to clean the water better, so more water but less or the same. I'm going to call it pollution. The different things that are in the water that are coming out. So the important part of this is the effect on Big Walnut is the same or less, and that's an important thing. It's called, it avoids a thing called anti-degradation. It's an EPA required process. And what they make you look at alternatives, they'll do public meetings. That's if we were going to try to increase the actual loadings into Big Walnut Creek. So our goal, and we have a plan here that does not involving all that, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through with that process. It is possible to increase that if we really had to. But that is our goal, and so far we feel we can meet that. Just showing you that we did one of the first important things we did in our facilities plan, and this is a very high level version of this. The facility plan is like 80 pages long or something. We're just looking at different service areas. We're trying to project how much flow you're going to have in the next 20 years. This is most of your existing area. Go ahead. And then the little Walnut sewer drainage area as well. So we're looking at where you have to expand, how much flow that can be, and as throughout we did this. Go ahead. So this is the other thing we look at is population projections. These are from Delaware County Planning Commission. We did not come up with these ourselves, but we did use them. They show somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3% growth throughout. And that's important for as we look forward to what's going to happen 20 years from now. Now, notice that these numbers also project what it's going to be like in 20 years here. So I believe they're expecting about 11,500 people here from, what are we, about 60?
About 6,800,
6,600. 66, well, on the table, about 6,600, be up to about 11,500 in about 20 years. So that's what they're expecting. So that's what we were using those numbers as well, instead of trying to redo these projections and all that. Go ahead. So what we did to help project what the wastewater plant flow would be like is we looked at the current per capita, like how much flow is hitting the plant divided by your current population. Works out to about 126 gallons per day per person. We used, for planning purposes, we used 130. So there are some assumptions made in this. I'll just mention is, of course, if the commercial or industrial went up or down, not in proportion with your population, then that per capita number, because that includes your commercial, industrial, and all those things now. So if those don't match, then the per capita could drop, and it's just we just have to make as best estimates as we can on that. So then that works out. We just looked at the population from that previous graph, worked out that we would be about your average current plant is about 1.125 MGD of average capacity a day. That means 1.125 million gallons per day it can treat. And by 2040, it needs to be about 2, is what on average, okay? Based on that population projections for the most part. And then the wet weather number down there, we're working on treatment plants. We have to worry about the average, and we also have to worry about peak flows, like an hourly peaks that you get from a rain event or something like that. And those go up as well. So it goes from 5.2 to about 7.2. Those mean short-term amounts of flow that it can't keep up with, but it can't do that all day long. You get the idea there. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Trying to keep this moving. This is a little hard to read. I see most of you with handouts. This is from the facilities plan. We went through every part of the plant. We rated it for what its existing capacity is by EPA and obviously industry standards. You can see that's the rated capacity number on the second column. And then we have 3 phases we planned out. One is the one we're designing right now. We'll talk a few minutes about that towards the end of this. That's happening right now. Then phase 1 is actually going to have to be happening pretty soon. That's where we expand to 1.35. And then we also have a phase 2 that's a little farther in the future, more ready for that 20-year horizon, and it lists the things that are going to happen on those particular processes. We're not recommending at this point any major changes in technologies and those kinds of things overall, which is great. So Dale and company aren't going to have to learn anything new, and we're not expecting to, it's just mostly, and the plant was really designed for a lot of expansion already, and we're just kind of doing that. We're just, doing those next steps that are pretty much already in there. So fortunately, that's all working out very well. Go ahead and do the next slide. And this is just the rest of it.
Sorry.
It looks similar. I'll just mention, because here we start showing some interim things in that third column. There are 3 main parts of the current design, and these are all meant to, the current design does not expand the plant. It gets us ready to expand the plant. It also helps address some immediate issues at the wastewater plant. Those three things is adding a third clarifier, which gives them a lot more redundancy and that's the final settling tank there at the top. Also gets them ready for, because at peak flows, they sometimes struggle with high flows through that plant, and this helps them with that, especially if something's down. I know they just had a part go bad this past year, and it was really hard to find the part. So that makes it really hard for them to maintain that. And the other two parts is a sludge transfer pump. Mayor, I remember you talking about this. They currently have to, when they want to move sludge back and forth from tanks, they have to literally kind of use fire hoses and portable pumps to move it. It's a very messy operation, very labor intensive. We are rehabilitating that part of the plant so that it's all just push a button and it transfers. And as they move that, the solids throughout the plant to the back. So that's part of this design, as well as the sludge storage area. They store sludge that gets removed, I think, once a year. They need more storage. So what happens if it's not covered, then rain and stuff makes it wetter and wetter. It makes it harder and harder to deal with. This is the solids that get removed from the wastewater. So that's mostly a kind of a glorified shelter house in a way. Right. I mean, it's more than that, but just give a visual of it. So I just want to highlight those three parts. Those are the current thing. But then you can see there's a whole list of things on the rest of it.
If you ever do like an aerial view, just for the two newer gentlemen, you know, they kind of look like the carport type thing. You know, it's a shelter that, you know, we can drive equipment in, but it just shelters it from the rain, so you can dry it out and clear it out.
Right. It's meant for use by front loaders. And the only other wrinkle of it from like a picnic shelter house, that's obviously heavier duty than that, has concrete push walls on the bottom, so you can push up against it, they'll scoop it and you know, drop and that kind of thing.
There's one other thing, I could be
There
wrong.
already is one there. We're just making it bigger.
I could be wrong on this, but don't we pay by the pound for
Exactly,
removal? So the
yeah.
lighter it can be, the cheaper it is to transport, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And also the number of trucks goes up and all that. Yeah. The more water we get out, it just all the way around, it makes it a lot easier. Yep, for sure. Yeah. Good points. Thank you. All right, go ahead. So construction costs, this is the immediate one. We're you know, in that 2 million and change there for that.
It's just when Dan says interim, that's what we've been calling the 2021 wastewater improvements project.
Yes, that's how we describe it in the facilities plan, so the EPA keeps it straight too. And then there's phase 1 and phase 2. So thank you, Dave. Why don't you go ahead and we'll see the rest. Phase 1 is where we're actually going to expand the plant. This is where it goes up, I think, to 1.35, is that whatever the number is. And that is the largest phases. That's a little under 5 million, trying to project out. And we'll talk about schedule here in a second. One of the things we're doing with this too is, besides upsizing all the things that need upsize to handle bigger flows, we're also keeping in mind end of life of a lot of equipment at the same time. So it's partially an asset management thing. A lot of them are getting bigger anyways, but we're also, you know, aware of things that are going to be at the end of their lives. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
we make sure they get replaced and taken care of.
I had mentioned to these gentlemen earlier that it's, you know, the wastewater treatment plant is, you know, one of our biggest line items. I mean, in terms of fee, but also, you know, debt burden and things of that nature. And, you know, when a pump goes out here, it's on the low end, the $35,000 pump, you know, on the high end, $100,000 pump. I'll tell you, like, our team that works there, the 2, now 3, they're as efficient as you can possibly be with both, you know, their time and the city's money. So they are very frugal, but we appreciate you taking a look at, you know, inventory management, asset management, things like that, because anytime you're in a rush to buy something, the price goes up because the demand is extremely high.
Yeah, and normally, just so everyone knows how this goes, is when you're doing a bigger expansion project like that, this is also the time where the funding has all been worked out and all that stuff to help pay for those kinds of things. It's all harder to pay for, you know, as a maintenance item in the middle of it, you know, outside of the capital project. Right. So this is by far the largest one here.
If I could add just another nugget, that the increase that project provides will serve about 600 houses at the numbers that Dan shared with you. At our current sewer capacity fee, which is about $8,500 per tap, if you multiply that by 600, you get well over $5 million. And so you can see that we're spot on. Our sewer connection fees are spot on for paying for what we need when we expand our wastewater treatment plants. My guess is you'll generate even more money because by the time we get to that point, your sewer connection fee might be $9,000 or $10,000 per house. And by the time the 600th house comes on, it might be 11 or 12. So your fees that you're collecting seem to be correct for the cost of providing wastewater treatment capacity.
I appreciate the context there. I'll just add one more thing onto that, you know, the way these work is, you know, you invest based on all the growth numbers that we mentioned earlier to understand where we're going to be, what percentage of capacity we're going to be at. So we stay underneath the EPA thresholds. But ultimately, Dave's right. You know, this is a mathematics exercise. We aren't trying to inflate our sewer tap fee. Sewer tap is not, you aren't buying anything physically. You're tapping into a line. And what you're doing is you're paying off debt or paying, you know, buying a portion of the plant is what you're doing. So I love that you added that, and thanks for all the legwork to put into this and then buttoning it up at the end there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great point. And then let's go to the next slide, and I have a couple comments about just costs in general. But and this one is the final expansion. We get up to 2 MGD on an average day. There's actually not as much to do at that point. It's kind of hits a peak in the middle there. And as we do everything, all of it is sized for 2 MGD. You know, I mean, if we put something in the first phase, it's sized for 2, which is, that makes sense. So a lot of phase 1 is also kind of part of phase 2 as well.
I just call out one more thing. So phase 1, it may be 66% of the cost, and you only get a 20% lift on your capacity. But you know, what Dan's saying here is, you know, they're not just incrementally going to get that rate of return. You know, the reason phase 2 is what it is because all the things that you upgraded in phase 1, you know, you can't do really 2 before you do 1. 1 is to put, I'll say, big items in, right. And then phase 2 is really where you get the return on the upgrade of the capacity.
Right. Correct. I'll just mention that I think this is important, especially as we look to start. We're going to be looking at bidding soon. This first, we call it again interim, mostly to keep everyone straight between the other phases. The bidding environment right now, I don't know if you guys bid anything like building or vertical related. It's, you know, when we did our best with these estimates. I'm not saying we shouldn't trust them, but contractors are having a hard time putting bids together because costs are changing so much right now. And delivery times are ridiculous. I mean, if you know, we're all seeing supply chain issues, but you know, a pump is 6 months, generators are a year. And I forgot that actually there's 3 generators in this first interim phase at the lift stations. That's because this is a plant focused thing that they weren't on there, but that's in this too. For 3 of the lift stations. But I'm just mentioning that that is really uncertain out there right now when it comes to bidding. The bids aren't necessarily a whole lot higher. They can be. I would say what's going to be is it's going to take a long time to get started for contractors and things like that. So it's just something. Doesn't mean do anything different. Just be aware.
Do we have an opportunity to look at the type of bid we put out there, like requesting a contractor or construction manager at risk model where we're putting the burden on, you know, the general contractor and they sub it out, and you know, really the pressure's on them?
This is a pretty small project for that, I would think, and that's not a common one in the public field, but I suppose we could try.
Okay. The high school project, and that is much bigger, you know.
Yes.
115
school systems use that model a lot. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not saying you can't, but that certainly wasn't the plan.
Right.
That also gets a little hairy with the EPA funding. It's not that you can't do it, but they're definitely going to be like, "Whoa, wait, we're not used to this." You know what I mean? So
right.
That's a little. They're used to a traditional, design bid build.
Okay, thank you.
It's not that they can't do it. Great. Next one. Okay, this is purely focused on the interim one here. Oh, I'm sorry. This is phase 1. I'm sorry. We are close to basically needing to start this project now. I'm talking about the next one. So what we're showing in here is that the detailed design would actually start this year for this that bigger project, because again, it's going to take 2 years, 3 years to get that one constructed and ready to go. And that's where the flow numbers are telling us. So just FYI on that. And you can see it's going to probably take, in the construction period of 2 years, I hope. But again, that's kind of like traditional. And you know, like I said, to get a generator, it's taking a year from just day of ordering until it gets delivered. Those kinds of things. So
We'll probably have 200 homes coming out of the ground in the next 2 years.
Right. So we're definitely, the phase 2 is farther off for sure. And what we say in the facilities plan is, I believe it's when you get to 80% of the, I think it's 1.2 MGD with the average day is about when you start thinking about that one, and that's a ways off. Just FYI.
So just so I understand, I apologize, so looking at the different costs over the period of time, so is it, I did rough math, about 10 million over till 2040 is about what the cost of these projects will be
Yes.
over time? Okay. And then,
Right, but it'll be, you know, spikes, obviously, you know, it won't be spread evenly.
Right.
The financing will be, I guess.
yeah, okay. And then is the population growth at, you know, whatever 1.5%, or is that, could we talk about 900 homes, or was it 600 homes that are paying $9,000? Will we see that same type of growth to fund those next phases, or is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Dave. Just
Okay,
more on
Okay.
that part, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the intent. That's the whole
Okay.
point of those connection piece.
Yeah, because if those houses don't come,
Mhm.
you don't need the sewer capacity.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and that's the other thing is if for whatever reason things slow down, I mean, you have another pandemic or whatever, and then it simply gets delayed.
And I'm assuming that's important as a phase 1 and putting the right stuff in up front, because at least you have that in place. You don't need to expand, but at least you have the good equipment up front with that.
Right. Well, phase 1 is an expansion of the plant, but a smaller one.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
But the point of that, kind of getting into why that one's so much more is that what we are doing, the individual pieces are expanding in capacity, just the whole plant capacity.
Okay.
The way EPA does plant capacities is they look through every piece and part, just like we did, and they see which one's the smallest capacity, and that's the rated capacity of your plant. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is we're grabbing the pieces that are getting triggered with that first expansion, that first need to go up, but we're making them all big enough for 2. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, think of it like a funnel. You know, we're
Yeah,
expanding the
it's
top of the funnel, but you know, there's still a bottleneck.
Yeah.
But you know, with that, when you get to phase 2, now you've got like the full pipe.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some really nice things about the plant too. Like we're not having to build another oxidation ditch. There's 2 out there already. We're just gonna have to make sure it gets used to its maximum capacity, which is gonna take a little work. So that's some of that savings is what's showing up in phase 2 as well, that you already have oxidation ditches, and so which is a major part of the process.
Yeah, so again, perspective stuff. The third clarifier, when we get the high flows, Dale has trouble getting the water through his clarifiers. And so what he ends up doing is dumping it into his spare oxidation ditch and kind of using that as a offline storage tank. If he has a third clarifier that allows him to push that water through, he doesn't need that wide spot off the side to store flows. We can put it back into the system as a functioning biological treatment unit and capture that capacity back.
Right.
And that was the driver for adding it to the interim project.
And that just shows you also when they have a part or something breaks on one of the clarifiers, it's all the more, because of course they don't know when the rain's hitting. That's when the highest flows hit, generally speaking.
Well, they do know when the part's going to break, and that's when it starts raining. So
Yes. But I know, I'll get this story. Go ahead. Or just the kind of last one of my last slides, and I'll get out of your way. The facilities plan has been submitted to Highway PA. A lot more complicated than what you guys are seeing there. It's being reviewed and approved. It was approved in terms of the interim project. What that means is they look at it long enough to say, what you're planning to do with the clarifier and all that makes sense. Okay, great. Which that's what they told me first. And then EPA decided that later that it needed to be sent to other people. I don't know why they did it this way, but unfortunately they're in charge of this part.
Other EPA people?
Yeah. So the engineering staff who are reviewing the design, the interim project, are the ones who've seen the facilities plan so far. And I kept asking them, Mark, you got to review, and they eventually agreed to me, and then they sent it to a different group of people. That review is happening right now. Okay. I've not heard anything from them. That group is more looking at is phase 1 and 2. Does that make sense? Long term. And the other thing they're trying to look at is how your wastewater plans are fitting in with Galenas and Delaware counties and anyone else in the direction, one of the important things with any of these projects is they don't want to loan anyone money to cover, like, two parties to cover the same service area, right? So they want to make sure you're all playing nice together. I don't think there's any issues, but that's the kind of stuff we're reviewing right now. I know we already have agreements in Delaware County and all that, so most of it's already figured out.
Right.
They're also, mentioned that. The interim drawings have been through them, and they've given us comments back, and we've given the stuff back to them, and now we're just waiting for them to finish up their reviews on that, so that hopefully will be soon. Waiting on more, whether they either approve it or just have more comments from EPA up. This is on the interim design. And then while that's happening, we're finishing things like, they don't review things like architecture, structural, electrical. We're finishing those things while we wait. So, and we'll be hopefully ready to bid as soon as they get done, depends on their comments, that kind of thing.
And the project was submitted for renomination for the priority list with Ohio EPA, and it was accepted. So as soon as we're ready, as soon as we have a PTI and constructible plans, we'll submit with council's direction to Ohio EPA for a loan. And it was a really low interest when we first started this, and I'm sure it's still fairly low, but probably not quite as low. But
Yeah,
it was less than 2, I believe, when we started this.
It'll be interesting too. I'll just mention this is actually an argument to also for getting the design started on this on phase number 1. I mean, we mentioned timing wise is probably you need to be thinking about it hard already, but all the stimulus money out there is the more ready you are, the more farther along you are with that, the more you can take take advantage of opportunities that stimulus money kind of pops up. And, it's various people find money and all that. And there's been a lot of rounds of it already. There's theoretically more coming. No one really knows exactly how that's working, but, or when, but if the more ready you are, the more chance you have of getting it, whether that's low interest stuff or even free, grant money. So
Yeah, our favorite term, shovel ready. So if you're
Shovel-ready,
shovel ready, you go to the front of the line.
if you show even the facilities plan getting in and getting approved shows you're serious, and that'll help.
Right.
So, but the more farther along you can be, the better.
There's been a significant amount of work that's gone into this. Like Dan said, there's an 80-page, not even including appendices type document that we have in place. It took us a while to get to the point, like, okay, we need to pursue this, with some nudging, and okay, we're up against, it was the right time to pursue this. So what you're seeing is kind of the end product or near end product of a lot of work that went in, last year, and we're ready to start acting on this. And we hope that the EPA will get back with.
I don't have any reason to think there's anything. It's just a matter of when they get done. Yeah, I don't see any problems with any of this
Just
stuff.
nudge them along and let them know interest rates, quantitative easing,
I believe
Federal
that.
Reserve.
Let them know the mayor's peeved.
We need that now.
Yeah, no, I've done a lot of nudging to encourage, make sure as much as we can.
We appreciate
They're very busy as well.
One questions?
No, thank you. Thank you. Very detailed.
John, anything else? All right.
I've
Thanks so
got
much. Dave. Oh, Steve?
I was wondering if the control and data acquisition system popped up on your radar.
Right now, outside of changing it where we need to add new stuff, we really haven't, there's really not much in there for that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the electronic piece, like the controllers and things
Yes,
like that?
yeah.
Yeah. When you walk in there, that reminds me of an old IBM room.
Yeah, that's not unusual in water and wastewater plants, quite frankly.
We purposefully kept the first interim phase to just those things that we knew we absolutely needed to operate the plant. I would certainly expect SCADA to be near the top of the wish list for the phase 1.
Yeah, they'll be touching so many things. There's no doubt that we'll be doing more work there. And the list came, we worked closely with Dale and what was the things that are really driving me crazy and really felt. And I'll point out, it might feel a little weird, like we're almost finished with the design or about to bid something, and then I'm telling you we got to start designing. That part of the schedule we didn't know until we did the facility plan. So that's kind of where we are. The other plan was supposed to be, here's some stuff we can do right now. We know it needs done. Let's just get knocking out, and hopefully we'll get rolling this year. And it turns out the facility plan is also directing us that the next one's coming faster. But phase 1 anyways is coming pretty fast as well. So that's kind of, if it sounds a little weird or something, that's why we didn't know that when we started.
And the last thing I'll say, and I promise the last thing I'll say on this, is that we created a folder on your OneDrive, and I think it's under council. I'm not sure exactly where it is. I think it's called temporary wastewater, and the facility plan is in that folder. So if you have access to the OneDrive and you're interested in reading this riveting 83-page document, it's available to you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we're on to the next item on the agenda, and we have roadway improvements, primarily generated from the new high school traffic impact study, also tying in Sunbury Parkway items. And we have Mr. Bob Keederly, our own Sunbury resident, Bob Keederly from CT Consultants, head transportation engineer, and glad to have you. Thank you again for pulling this together.
Yeah,
As well.
thanks for inviting me, everybody.
I have to say, I'm a Joe Township resident, so I'm at least close.
He's okay. That wastewater planning effort was at the end, and we're gonna build stuff and it's gonna be cool, and the roadway planning effort is at the very beginning, so we're gonna be talking a lot more generalities here on the roadways. Couple of you guys are maybe a little more new to the material, so we'll kind of start from the beginning and as we go forward. I'm going to walk over here because I like to point. So one of the things that got us started with this was the school project. So high school's open. We thought it was going to be a mess. It works, right? The school isn't at capacity. Every year we're going to add students, and that's going to kind of amp up what's going on. So the first thing we did in our office to look at roadway planning, this is Cherry Street coming into Sunbury, and that's State Route 3. And it doesn't matter what it is from far away. The colors are the projects that were in the traffic impact study done for the elementary school and high school. So the first thing we did was, let's draw them all up, see what they look like, see what they cost, and see what we think about them, right? So this was all of them, all over the map. Add these numbers up, it's about $4 million. $4 million without right of way, without soft costs, that's just construction costs. So we can go to the next slide.
Real quick for context, 3 years ago, they were like $2.75 million. And those were high level estimates. This is a little bit more granular, and I think Bob and his team have done, a really good job analyzing to the level where we can start making some baseline decisions. So
Thanks. So, yeah, and so the challenge is, what do we build and when, right? How do we phase this in? That makes sense. Pretty clearly right out of the gate, the intersection of Miller Drive and Cherry is probably where we're going to feel the most pain already and the place to start. So we're kind of zoomed in on here. And these estimates now, we've actually drawn these up to scale so we can measure things. And it's coming a little more clear, right? So this is Cherry and Miller, and it's pretty big improvements to go dual lefts into Miller Drive. And we all know what this feels like. Miller Drive doesn't have lanes to take dual lefts into it, right? So we've got to build them. We're also dual lefts coming out. So at the end of the day, the high school's dumping out dual lefts back out in the Cherry. Again, red over here is adding through lanes to catch those. And then this one's interesting too, coming in from the west, right? We want dual lefts, and we also want dual throughs, because when we have 2 through lanes, we get twice as much green time through our signal. So now we're widening all over the place, and we're whacking the traffic signal here all the way around, except probably all 4 corners. And if we were going to design this improvement to build right now, we'd want to look at the full build of this thing, because the last thing we want to do is build a new traffic signal and then have to build another new traffic signal. So we can go to the next slide.
Real quick, if you've been down to Easton, you can maybe tell, like, they didn't add subsequent lanes, but they put in, you know, the right signal heights and made the right of way the right width initially. And then, you know, as growth occurred, you know, they've added additional lanes in there. And, you know, to Bob's point, we don't want to piecemeal this. That's why we're looking at it comprehensively.
Yeah, we don't want to put the signal pole right here and then need it to be back here. Where we had more lanes.
And are you going to hit on that? You know, some of the yellow and red here is not existing right away, and
That's the slide.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
So, you know, what do we need to build? What does it cost? How do we like it, right? So McDonald's and Wendy's, in order to get all these lanes in here that were in the traffic impact study, we are going from the edge of pavement of Wendy's parking lot, retaining wall, sidewalk, curb, all a bunch of lanes, curb, sidewalk, McDonald's parking lot. So from building to building, it is pavement all the way across to fill all those lanes in there. We're outside the right of way. It's not an insignificant thing, right? So we want to make sure if we were going to commit to going down this road, we want to be really sure that this is a solution, long-term solution. We can go to the next slide. Just to kind of zoom in on the south, it's a little funky in here because of the location of this intersection is close. We've got a short turn lane now, and we've got this turn lane that kind of comes over, goes in, and then continues. The improvements from the school TIS on this approach really only have widening to go to another through lane, right? So the traffic coming up Miller can pump through this intersection faster through the signal. And because we've got dual receiving lanes on the other side. But now we're going from 3 lanes here, right? There were still 3 here with this median thing. Now, poof, we're 5. So that would take this area from, you know, a little bit funky to a lot more funky. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at with the level of planning we're doing now. What else about this study, right? So this was a traffic impact study for school buildings, executed the same way we do a developer study. A couple of things. You might feel like, hey, I'm looking at this intersection, I kind of expect more improvements on the south side. The school study was built around school operating hours, right? So high school gets out at 2:30 in the afternoon. In the morning, you know, the schools are kind of loading during the AM peak hours. So the school study's a pretty good gauge on the morning, but the afternoon has got the school peak at 2:30, and we've got our kind of evening peak at 4:30, 5:30. So that's the thing where we could be missing whole improvements because we don't have those hours.
Yeah. So in other words, the scope was tailored to look at, you know, how the ceiling of the school traffic impact study could have potentially been 3:30 or something in the afternoon, and we may have more issues than just this. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the school study addressed the school impacts, right?
Right.
They didn't address our impacts because
Right.
we're running a city that runs all day long.
Yep.
So we're looking at that and trying to roll that into it now. School study had a 2% growth rate on it on Cherry. You know, the wastewater planning is 3, so that's more. And, you know, that 3% is citywide. This is a road that's going to directly take the dumping traffic off of Sunbury Parkway. So we can go to the next slide here. So we want to study this with all the factors that are coming into it. We've all seen this before. This is the old phasing plan and the current phasing plan for the new interchange. So existing 36, 37, new interchange, Sunbury Parkway. This corridor that we're looking at that dumps right into Miller Drive and Route 3, all the traffic from the new development that wants to get into the rest of Sunbury is piping in right here. And that is not something that we want to neglect when we're looking at Cherry Street as the major kind of west gateway into the city. This is the old plan. If you zoomed way in, you'd see cost numbers here. Because the developer situation turned over, ODOT is putting together a whole new funding plan. So that's in the works. And I think the phasing rollout that was originally invented is still on the table, but the funding plan is blown up. So we can go to the next one. Other things impacting. So this is the approved growth map, right? And it's got the purple lines are the thoroughfare plan roads. So we've got our, annexation way to the west, all coming into this gateway, school site. And in addition to just the additional development, Joe, you were talking about rooftops. We've got our industrial park. We've also got some roadway connections that will have an impact on what we do at Miller, at least, right? So right now, to get to the industrial park school site, Kittner Parkway and Miller Drive, that's it, 2 ways in. If this thoroughfare plan builds itself out a little bit more, we've also got a west connection into the industrial park that somehow gets to 36, 37. And we've also got a punch through to 61 in the east. Now, I know that was studied in the school TIS, and it was an either or. And I would agree that we're never going to force the traffic inside the school site to go where we want it to go, because we just can't do that. But bringing those other 2 connections online may reduce kind of the craziness at Miller, which would be a good thing.
I'll hit on real quick. So you see the large square up there, that's the high school site.
School site.
That's, and this was made in 2016 before we knew there was going to be a school there. But I think it shows the forethought that the thought was there needs to be a connection from whatever that's going to be, whether it's residential, industrial, to the south, where Sunbury Parkway connects. And that dotted line that goes to the south and to the west connects into 36, 37. That's just east of the Vineyard Church. And that's Tim Newman's property. He's building his new facility back near the easement area. So on our thoroughfare plan, we have a connection there, and also the connection that goes to the east to State Route 61. The McDonald's own that large swath of land.
This is 61 here, and this is what?
Yeah, and north. This would be north of Sunbury Estates. Basically, if you've driven to the new high school from Miller Drive, you're driving, and when you're on the driveway, you look to your right. That's kind of where
you hang a left to go into the school. To the right is out to 61.
We've also the last thing I'll say on this, that the schools we've preserved I can't remember 150-foot right of way on the whole south swath of the school property to potentially put a future roadway and east-west connector to allow, if you think of traffic as a bucket of water, the more holes that you can pop in the bucket, the faster and safer that water can flow, as opposed to you just have, a pressurized bucket of water shooting a stream, out of one hole or 2 holes in this particular case.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's great. And think about our old campus. We had basically 2 holes. You can go out through the middle school, you can go through the high school.
Right.
This is going to be bigger, and more holes are better.
Right.
Anything else on this map? We can go to the next slide. So we're just getting started on this right now. What we want to do is first build ourselves an updated picture of what the traffic looks like based on what we understand is really going to happen. We've got the interchange in Sunbury Parkway coming in. We've got the school campus. We know what the traffic is from the school. We've got the other development and growth, which is not a thing that one of the most fast-growing communities is going to want to neglect. And we've got these 2 potential other connections. And if we could see the whole package, and we understand that some of these impacts are directly related to the interchange and the federally funded project to the west, we could favorably position this for outside funding rather than, 500 for a turn lane, 500 for a turn lane, and then it's all gone. And we don't really have the nucleus of a kind of a big planning effort like we did with the wastewater.
Right.
So we can go to the next slide. I'd like feedback on this. These are the locations that I think are most relevant to me that I think we need to pay attention to. So out here where Sunbury Parkway comes into 36, 37, Cherry Street, I'm not convinced that this is fully baked on how this works, right? And if you throw this connection up toward Tim Newman in, now I'm really not convinced that we know exactly how that looks. Kittner Parkway, existing signal, that's a big one on everybody's radar. The school study didn't touch on Cheshire Road,
Right.
but I mean, I think
It needs fixed. I mean,
it needs something.
it needs something.
Or we at least need to know what we're doing to it, because
Right.
if we make that dysfunctional, that's the way into the middle school that
Right.
doesn't go through Fairland Drive. So
Yeah.
that's a link that we need to look at. And then these are the biggies. And, up 61 is not a big deal. I think we've got existing congestion at 61 and Route 3 in the peak hours. Maybe some of that can be fixed with signal retiming, but these are kind of long-term, the biggies.
Yeah, I think you asked for feedback at the beginning. I totally agree with the scope of what we're looking at here. Even with the two dots that are not signalized today whatsoever, and that's the State Route 61, the northern one, and then also the future Sunbury Parkway connection near Tim Newman's property on 37. And I agree with you; it's not fully baked. We've said, as a city, we've said to ODOT numerous times that, listen, on our thoroughfare plan, we have a northbound connection from Sunbury Parkway, that Y connection where you're basically, diverting traffic here and trying to push it down to 36, 37, and really the heart of Sunbury at this point, kind of the nucleus, as Bob said. We may be losing an opportunity to relieve some of the traffic to the north. Let's look at this comprehensively. And Bob's been really receptive to this feedback from us, and he's been a good advocate for us with ODOT. Just ODOT's focus is this: get traffic off of 71, as far out as you possibly can. That's their goal. Free up capacity on 36, 37, the interchange. Their focus, and I'm probably making it sound worse than what it is not how we figure it out in Sunbury. And that's where we're starting to kind of shift the tide, where we say, hey, there is going to be significant impact here, or you're just pushing a problem that's by the interstate into downtown Sunbury, and that won't work. So that's where we're at right now.
And this doesn't really go that far, right? This takes it to here. If you're going to punch through, you are in downtown Sunbury. And I think that's a whole other can of worms that I'm not suggesting we open at this point. Anything else on this map before we go next one? Okay, we go.
Any questions, John or Murray?
Yeah, you guys drop in anytime. Update on where ODOT is with the interchange project and the Parkway project. This is the current track is where ODOT funds big projects, big new, right? And our project is down here and we're on it, right? And this is great. We're on track tier 1, which means there's money to go. This thing that's bigger, I blew it up so that we don't all have to squint. We're on track for $10 million worth of ODOT funding and $21.9 million of local funding. So that's a pretty heavily weighted local. And this all requires TIF money from a developer project at the interchange as a seed to get it all going. The point here is there's money committed, there's not enough committed. It's lined up for right away in 2024. ODOT is continuing to move this along in a couple of different ways. They have a consultant starting the design process for phase 1, which is the new bridge and the first bit of ramps. That's an important thing. And that's what gets us shovel ready. So even though that feels like a little bit of cart before the horse, that's good. The sooner we can get that ready, when stimulus money comes, it's ready to go. They have another consultant updating the environmental document. Now, when ODOT does big federally funded, any projects federally funded, NEPA is Environmental Policy Act, and they've got to justify that all the moves they're making aren't disadvantaging anybody unfairly. So
They look at a bunch of different things, everything from impact to farmland to impact to parks,
social justice.
yeah, sound, noise, type of impacts. They look at endangered species, wetlands, all of that, and they've got a kind of a scope or an area that they draw a line around and say, this is the area we're going to study and we're going to do it in detail. Another 150-page document that goes into a lot of detail. Dave? Yeah, did you want to add something?
I'm going to have a question when you're done conversing.
Yeah, sorry, I was just adding context for what an environmental study at face value, you're like, oh, okay, I can do one of those in my backyard with a science project. I got it done in a couple weeks. No, this is like a 9-month.
Archaeology.
It's been done once. Yeah, exactly.
And it's got to be, and they expire and they need to be updated, and there's traffic numbers in that drives all the other stuff. So
Yeah.
That's not a small lift to update that environmental study.
Right.
Yeah, Bob, so the fact that that $10 million is green, isn't that construction?
That green, that is in the PEDD-RW column.
No, RW is blue. It's under the 2024. It's not under the,
You're right.
it's not under the right-of-way column. So I think that's their commitment of their track money to the project in 2024. Because currently it's under design, right? It's under construct, it's under design in 2022 by the TID and their contractor, their consultant, MS Consultants, I believe. The AER is under update by Crawford Tilley through ODOT, and that should be done by the end of the year. So we ought to have most of the environmental stuff and the design stuff completed by 2023, which ought to let them, if everything's hunky-dory and the right-of-way is still available, start construction by 2024.
And the local money is there to mix in.
Right, yeah, all the money, yeah, and the other money.
If we flip the pages down the track sheets, there's tier 1, there's tier 2, there's tier 3. Other parts of this project are further down, but tier 1 is what gets us to construction. So that's where ODOT is now. So we can go to the next slide. Where we are is ODOT has said to us, we're updating the environmental and the traffic numbers. We don't know how we're doing that yet. Once they make up their mind and let us know, we'll absorb their traffic numbers into ours, and then we go. I don't want to get ahead of them and then have to redo our work and waste time. So that's how we kind of stack up schedule wise with ODOT. We'll need to do a little bit of data collection and to get going, but most of the traffic volumes we have from one source or another are pretty easy to get. I think something I didn't put in there, low-hanging fruit with the school impacts, is I don't think we've done anything to look at the traffic signal timings since the schools have turned on. So it's probably time to do that. We could do maybe some time of day programming around 2:30 that would help clear it out at the end of the day and pump them in the morning. So we'll be looking at that in the short term.
One other thing we're going to hear from the police later, we have Officer Whiteside, our newest Big Walnut local school district school resource officer. He's done a comprehensive journaling every single day of the traffic impact, but also more importantly, we have all the data elements. David, come on in. We have all the traffic counts from the radar signs, which I think is just a good data point to do. I think it's great that we should look at how we can kind of tweak the existing model, without these comprehensive type changes, just to make it better right now. And ultimately, we need to start kind of lining up like which direction are we going to go here, because there's kind of two schools of thought. One, I think the approach we've taken for a long time is wait until it's broken and fix it. I don't think that that's going to get us where we really need to be. Our job is to, fund projects to keep people safe. I think that's our primary thing. Our fire department is right on the strip of land. It's like, ground zero here. And we need to keep, traffic flowing and moving, and the problem's not going away. One methodology that other municipalities have started to kind of move towards is put the infrastructure in on the front end, and the development that you want to come will come. So you size it appropriately, you design it appropriately, you work with the landowners to make sure that, hey, I'm going to put this in, and that's going to allow your property to develop more effectively, as opposed to let's wait until the last minute and have a developer get into contract and say, hey, this is what I want to put in here, and put a road in. New Albany is a great example, for better or worse. They've put a ton of infrastructure in on the front end, and they got what they asked for. Dublin's another one that, they put a lot of the roadway, sewer, stormwater, electric, fiber, all these things in kind of on the front end, understanding that it's an upfront cost with methods to recoup the cost on the back end. So yeah, that's just a different way to think about it.
Is Route 3 or 3637, excuse me, is it too big for roundabouts? Just
It is not.
It is not. Okay. I'm just curious because I know that seems to be a growing, especially in New Albany and traveling out 605 and all that. I mean, it's 3 or 4 roundabouts in a row.
In Dublin.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And those are, ODOT is changing their methodologies at how we look at intersections and what's kind of the first pick. And it used to be just kind of gut feel whether you go that way or not. And they're going to make that a little more formalized. So I think you'll see it a little more even throughout the state. And on the philosophy piece, I think this is important. We were on a call today talking about the federal funding that's coming through now soon. The competitive grant programs that aren't out in the world yet, the way those things are shaping up is they're going to favor those communities that have their ducks in a row, have a plan. I mean, maybe you don't have to put the infrastructure in the ground like Joe's saying and get paid back, but people like New Albany and Dublin that are ready for it are gonna absorb even more of the money.
Right.
So we do not want to be on the other end of that.
I agree. Any other questions for Bob? I know we're up kind of against the window here. We've gone over a lot of time. Bob, this has been very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. This was
looking forward to working with you to solve all of our problems.
All of them.
Yeah. Like there's no milk at Kroger. Did you figure that out?
Yeah.
Do we want to bring in Damon in the roll call and see if we can approve the minutes from the last meeting? All right, I'll make a motion on the minutes. Damon,
Second.
Damon's got a second. Discussion. Roll call.
John Goodman,
Abstain.
David Kaplan.
Yes.
Lori Grant,
Steve,
Joe St. John.
Yes. All right, good deal. The new business, anything for the good of the order? All right. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by John Montgomery. Discussion. Roll call.
John Goodman,
Yes.
David Kaplan.
Yes.
Lori Grant,
yes.
Joe St. John.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.